Hey everybody! I am, like I said, currently on my winter break right now from college, so I'm recording from home. And because I moved all my stuff, up to college, and now I'm back here, I'm gonna be recording in a different spot, a much more comfortable spot, if I'm honest, for the next month, until I come back in like January. This one right now is going to be sort of a quick, just a fun one to do. We're going to be doing a tier list of all of the Life is Strange protagonists, ranking them, and why I've ranked them in that particular order. So without further ado, let's just get into it. And at number 7, last place is Chris from Captain Spirit. Now, my reasoning is that it is such a short demo that it's fun. It has a lot of great mechanics. I love the concept of playing through this story as a kid, so you see the world as a kid. You see all the imaginary robot fights and how this cardboard is really armor and he's really a superhero. Things like that. I think it's a very fun concept for a demo. But beyond that, he sort of is, just that. It's a demo to get people excited for the second Life is Strange game. So I really can't rank him super, super high, in my opinion, because of the nature of the game that he's in. I do think it's, once again, like I said, very, very fun to play as a kid and get this very unique perspective in this game. However, it's also, his internal monologue is kind of just, every kid joke cliche you can think of. So for that reason, I have to put him pretty low. Number 6 is going to be Steph from Life is Strange True Colors Wavelengths, and pretty similar reason. I have never really been super attached to Steph, if I'm honest, even from the beginning. I think she's a well done side character, and I'm glad she got a lot more time to shine in True Colors. That's why True Colors is one of my favorites, because I think the side characters in that game are really fantastic. But I really didn't think that she carried her own DLC that well. I do think she's a great character, and this is not a slight at the writers or the actor. I just think that I'm not a huge fan of the characters that are just featured in DLCs, because I think the mark of a great Life is Strange character is seeing how they evolve over the course of the journey through multiple episodes. So that's just my reasoning there. At number 5, I have a very controversial opinion, but this is an opinion that I share with my friends, so I feel bold enough to put it on the internet. Let me know in the comments below if you disagree, but I'm putting at number 5 Max Caulfield from the original Life is Strange game. Now, my reasoning for this is nothing against Hannah Tell or the original game at all. The original game is, once again, one of my favorites. I think I'm going to say that about every game. I just love them all in many, many different ways for many, many different reasons. I love Life is Strange 2 for different reasons than I love True Colors. They're two very different games, but they're both really, really good. And that sort of idea applies to Max. Now, I think that Max is a fun protagonist. However, some of the stuff she says, I can't help but roll my eyes at, and not really in an endearing way, in more of a really kind of way. Her power is very fun, and it was very novel, especially in that first game. However, I think that there are powers that we've seen in later games that I think sort of almost top it in the way that you get to use them in the environment, for puzzles, for talking to people. Overall, I just feel like she is a very good baseline protagonist, especially for the first one. However, I think when you compare her to some of the other characters that we've gotten to know over the course of these games, she really isn't the most fascinating, gripping one that we have. At number 4, we have Sean Diaz from Life is Strange 2. Sean is notably the only male Life is Strange protagonist. And I think for that reason, he not necessarily gets hate, but I feel like a lot of Life is Strange's fan base is primarily female. I know that I'm in the minority being a cisgendered male in this community. So I think for that reason, some people felt a bit of a disconnect to him. However, as a guy myself, I did really enjoy his sort of the relationship he had with his brother. It was very different than anything we had ever really seen in a Life is Strange game. And I also like the journey that he goes on, the way he grows alongside his brother over the course of Life is Strange 2. That's why I'm putting him ahead of Max, because she does feel fairly static throughout the whole game. And sure, she does get her comeuppance in episode whatever, episode 5, when they're all like, you just manipulated time for blah, 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 blah. I feel like the arc that Sean goes on is that much better. However, the reason he's not ranked higher is because I think it's because of the story he's in. It doesn't feel like a Life is Strange game, you know what I mean? And that's sort of one of the criticisms that it got when it came out, and that's why the reviews were sort of poor from fans. But I think that Life is Strange 2 is an amazing game. I think it's a masterpiece, but it's not my favorite Life is Strange game, period. I think it's a great game, maybe not the best Life is Strange game. And it's not that you can't have variation in what you can do in a Life is Strange game. You can have it be a whodunit, you can have it be set in the Rockies, you can set it in Oregon, wherever it is. It's not necessarily the setting or what particularly happens that makes it a Life is Strange game. I think it just has to do with the vibe and the feeling. And I think the feeling of Life is Strange 2 and Sean as a character is much different than what we are used to as, Life is Strange. But overall, I think he's probably one of the best acted of our protagonists in terms of like all of his emotional scenes. Because up till this point, we've had Chloe in Before the Storm, we've had Max in the first one, and then we had him. And I think people just they just wanted to see more of Arcadia Bay, and I'm guilty of that as well. However, I think in terms of the acting caliber, he's steps ahead of those characters because of the subject matter that he has to deal with. It's a little less like teen angst and more very serious social problems. At number 3, we have Chloe Price from Before the Storm. Now, I might get some, backlash for this list, but I really like Chloe as a protagonist, especially the version of her that we see and really get to play as in Before the Storm. I think the actress who plays her is fantastic. When I read the Life is Strange comics, I hear that actress's voice. Not necessarily Ashley Birch. There's no hate to her, but I really like the way that she performs those sort of angsty, dumb lines, for lack of a better term. The sort of angsty teen stereotype stuff. I think she really makes it work and made it very comedic rather than cringy in some of the earlier games. I think she really makes some of that angsty teen dialogue and inner monologue work because of her performance. And I also have, I think I've said it before, I have a lot of nostalgia, in all honesty, for Before the Storm. I remember going, and buying that game and waiting week by week to play it, versus the first Life is Strange, where I came upon it a little after it had all come out. I didn't get anything really spoiled. I had a great experience playing it. However, the one that I really remember like sitting down waiting for the next release was Before the Storm. So I think I'm a little partial to that game in particular, but at least I can admit it. It's my list, so like I said, let me know if you disagree what your list is in the comments below. But in all seriousness, I think that the performance and also the writing, I think the like I said, the cringy dialogue works for this actress and this version of Chloe because she is younger than pretty much any other protagonist that we have. Max is a senior in high school, and this is when Chloe's like, 15, 16-ish? So I feel like they really just nail the teenage drama, angsty vibe that I really enjoy from that game, and especially from where I was at that point in my life. It sort of just clicked with me instantly, so I really enjoyed that. I think number 2 is going to be the most controversial of all of these, but it's my list. Alex Chen from Life is Strange True Colors is my second favorite protagonist, I would say, because I think that her powers lend itself very well to the internal monologue aspect, also the emotional aspect of the character, because of how she kind of wears her heart on her sleeve and her whole power revolves around her emotions. I think that she is a really great character that's very relatable to a lot of people, including myself. I also think her performance is fantastic. I will always rave about True Colors and the acting in it, because I think the technology in the mocap and the graphics took such a leap from Life is Strange 2 to True Colors. I mean, I remember I was freaking out, pointing out when I was playing the game that, you can see the wrinkles when they smile and like the way the skin folds. I was like freaking out because I really think that game strikes a perfect balance between the more cartoon aspects of the game, the more like drawn, painterly aspects of the first game, and the much more photorealistic sort of standard for video games nowadays. I think it does a great job of blending those two, especially in the character models, because I never felt any sort of uncanny valley, or there were never any animations like in the first Before the Storm and the second game, where you get these very awkward or like stale animations when the characters talk of like, oh, I'm going to fold my arms now, and now I'm going to put my hand on my hip. Those sorts of basic animations, that's not really something that you encounter in this game because a lot of it is fully motion captured, and I believe Life is Strange 2 was as well. However, I still feel that they really were still ironing out the kinks at that point in time. But in terms of the character herself, I think her power is by far one of the most interesting. And I think that her relationship with her brother, as well as the change that she goes throughout the entire game, for me, makes her really stick out in my mind as a great protagonist. I also think that she feels very realistic. Some of the other characters are a bit over the top in terms of the way they behave. Chloe in Before the Storm is cartoonishly angsty. Max in the first game is cartoonishly, shy and awkward and quirky. Sean is probably the other most realistic and well-done character, other than Alex. So overall, that's why I put Alex there. And I also think that just the supporting cast that she has and the talent behind them also elevates her, because gives her a lot more to bounce off of. And also, in terms of the performance, being on a motion capture stage with other actors elevates it to another level, because in the first game you had a lot of people recording their lines on their own in a sound booth. They're not physically on a set, and it's being animated afterwards. Now you might be wondering, well, who's the number one protagonist? I mean, we've gone over everybody. There's Max, Chloe, Alex, Chris, Sean. Who's left? Max Caulfield from Double Exposure is my number one protagonist. While my thoughts on Double Exposure have shifted a little bit since I did my first impressions, and I know I've been putting off doing that full review, I apologize. While my thoughts on the game itself have shifted, the one thing that hasn't is the amount of love I have for Hannah Tell's performance, as well as the way that Max's character was handled in Double Exposure. Because I feel that when you look at her in 2013, when the original game occurs, and then now, 10 years later, she is in a completely different spot in her life, I think they really mastered the concept of taking a character and saying, okay, well, how does this thing in her life affect her? How does she change over 10 years and grow up? Which I really appreciated, because of the age that I was when the first game and Before the Storm came out, the age I am now. A lot has changed since then, and it felt very real in the way that her priorities shifted, the way how she behaved, how she became a little more extroverted, and things along those lines, finding herself, what she wanted to do. Simply in the relatability factor, for me personally, she takes the cake, because we've seen her at a younger age, we've seen her at an older age, and I think that growth itself is very realistic. I know a lot of people disagree with me, but I think a lot of people, when it comes to Double Exposure, they don't like it because it's not the same as the first game, and it includes Max. They're like, why isn't she like this? She would never say these things. Well, I'm sure when you were a teenager, you wouldn't be saying some of the things you're saying now in your 20s. I know for me personally, I look at myself when I was a teenager, I look at myself now, I'm in college, I'm in my 20s, and I think to myself, that's a completely different guy who I really, sometimes I don't like. So I think for them to be able to do that so well with this fictional character is fantastic. And then once again, raving about Hannah Tell's performance. She's such a multi-talented actor. Her singing, her acting, and then the fact that she's just generally super intelligent, just dropping the whole neuroscience thing to be like, oh, I'll do a quick thing. I really think she should have won the Game of the Year. I really think she should have won the Best Performance of the Year award, or Best Actor. I really think she should have won the Best Actress award at the Game Awards. I really think she deserved it, and how far she's come, even, to go from a very good performance in the first game to just an outstanding performance in this one. I think it says a lot about her and her work ethic. So for that reason, as well as the fact that I think her power of flipping between timelines is very, very interesting. And I think it was one of those times that it kind of justified having a higher power rig, higher powered computer to make this game run perfectly, because of how seamless the transitions were, as well as the way that it was used in puzzles. Now, there are a few issues with the mechanic, but I think the concept, and when it's executed well, it works really, really well. So all that to say, Max from Double Exposure is by far my favorite protagonist. If you would have asked me before that game came out, I think I would have told you either Chloe or Alex, depending on how I was feeling. This is one of those lists that if you ask me in a month, something's going to shift around. Maybe Sean goes up a spot, maybe, Alex goes down one. It's one of those things that I love all of these games, all of these characters, all of these actors so much that it's almost like asking you to, pick a favorite. But I tried. So thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate every single one of you. I know this video was a little quicker, a little maybe lower effort, so I apologize for that. But yeah, I appreciate every single one of you. I hope you guys are having a great, winter break, depending on if you're in school or not. I hope you are. I hope you're spending lots of time with family and not wasting it watching me on your own. Please, go spend time with your family and friends and loved ones. So, but thank you so much for watching, and have a good morning or evening or, whatever.